Okay, let's dive right into Numbers chapter 5 for this deep dive.
Sounds good. This chapter, it's quite a mix, isn't it? You get these instructions, these laws, covering some very different areas of life.
Exactly. Community life, purity. And it all feels quite uh, packed together here. We go from broad community rules to really specific situations.
And some of those specifics are, well, pretty surprising when you look closely at the text itself.
Definitely. So let's start at the beginning. Section 1 seems to be about maintaining the purity of the camp itself.
That's right. It starts with the Lord instructing Moses, basically saying certain people need to be sent outside the main camp area.
And it's quite specific about who. Anyone with an infectious skin disease.
Right, or a discharge of any kind.
Or someone who's become ceremonially unclean because they've been near a dead body.
And the text makes a point of saying this applies equally, male or female, the rule is the same.
Which is an important detail. But the reason given, that's what really struck me.
Yes, why do they have to leave? The text says it's so they will not defile the camp where the Lord dwells among them.
So it's not just, say, public health, though that might be a consequence.
Okay.
It's directly tied to the idea of God's presence making the camp holy ground.
Precisely. The physical space is sacred, and physical conditions perceived as impure could, in this view, contaminate that sacred space. It links individual bodies to the community's relationship with the divine.
A very direct connection. And it does mention the Israelites followed these instructions.
Yep, it wraps that part up by saying they did exactly as the Lord commanded Moses.
Okay, so that's about keeping the physical space pure, related to God's presence. What about when things go wrong between people inside the camp?
Well, the chapter moves right into that. It addresses wrongdoing against another person.
And the framing is interesting. It says when someone wrongs another in any way, they are thereby being unfaithful to the Lord.
That link is quite powerful, isn't it? Harm against a fellow community member is simultaneously an act of unfaithfulness towards God.
It definitely raises the stakes beyond just a civil dispute. So what's the process if someone is guilty of this?
Well, first, they have to confess the sin they committed. Acknowledgement seems key.
Confession first. Okay, then.
Then, they need to make full restitution for whatever wrong they did. Make the person whole again, financially speaking.
And there's that extra bit mentioned, right? They add something on top.
Yes, exactly. They have to add 1/5, 20% of the value to the restitution amount and give the total to the person they wronged.
Huh. Why the extra fifth? Is it like damages or interest or...
It does feel like more than just repayment, perhaps a penalty for the act itself, reinforcing the seriousness, especially since it's framed as unfaithfulness to God. It's like a cost for breaking that trust.
That makes sense. And what if the person who was wronged isn't around? Maybe they died and have no family to receive it.
Yes, there's a provision for that specific case. If there's no close relative to receive the restitution, it belongs to the Lord.
To the Lord. How does that work practically?
It goes to the priest. And the text mentions this restitution is given to the priest along with the ram that's used for atonement for the guilty person.
So even without a direct human recipient, the debt, the wrong, still needs settling, but it's settled within the sacred system, with the priest acting as the receiver for God.
Exactly. It underscores that the wrong has repercussions beyond the purely human level, and then it states a kind of general rule.
Oh, yeah.
That sacred contributions people give to a priest become the priest's property. It clarifies that while your sacred gifts are yours to decide on, once given to the priest, they belong to him. Seems like a practical point about temple or tabernacle economy.
Got it. Okay, so we've had camp purity, we've had restitution for wrongs. Now, the chapter takes a really sharp turn, doesn't it, into something quite different.
It really does. This next section is often called the law of jealousy, and it's probably the most complex and, frankly, challenging part of the chapter.
Yeah, it deals with suspected marital infidelity, but under very specific circumstances.
That's the key. The setup is a husband suspects his wife has been unfaithful, has gone astray, and slept with another man.
And this seems crucial, it's hidden. The husband doesn't know for sure. Her impurity, if it exists, is undetected.
Right. There are no witnesses. She wasn't caught in the act. There's no normal evidence.
So what kicks this whole process off isn't proof, but the husband's feeling.
Exactly. The text says feelings of jealousy come over the husband, causing him to suspect her. And it even notes this applies whether she is actually impure or not. The law is triggered by his suspicion in the absence of facts.
Wow. So it's a mechanism for dealing with corrosive suspicion when there's no other way to resolve it.
Yeah.
What does the husband do?
He has to take his wife to the priest. That's the first step.
And bring an offering for her.
Yes, a specific one. 1/10 of an ephah of barley flour.
Barley flour. That seems maybe less refined than the usual wheat flour for offerings, and it's a small amount, 1/10 of an ephah.
It does seem like a more basic grain, and the text is very explicit about what not to do. Don't pour oil on it, don't put incense on it.
Which is unusual, right? Oil and incense were common.
Yeah.
Symbols of richness, maybe, or fragrance pleasing to God.
Exactly. Omitting them here is significant. It marks this as different. It's called a grain offering for jealousy. A reminder offering, the text says, to draw attention to guilt. It reflects the bitterness and suspicion, not joy.
Okay, so the offering itself carries this heavy symbolism. Then the priest gets involved.
Yes, the priest takes charge of the ritual. He brings the woman and has her stand before the Lord, likely near the tabernacle entrance.
And then there's this preparation with water.
Right. The priest takes holy water from a sacred source, presumably the laver in a clay jar, and then he adds dust from the floor of the tabernacle itself into the water.
Dust from the holy ground, mixed with holy water. That's very symbolic. What else does the priest do?
He loosens the woman's hair. Scholars debate the exact meaning, maybe a sign of mourning or shame or removing adornments before God. Then he puts the barley flour offering into her hands.
So she's holding the reminder offering.
While the priest holds this mixture, now called the bitter water that brings a curse.
Bitter water, okay. And then comes an oath.
Yes, the priest puts the woman under oath. It's a conditional oath, laying out both possibilities.
How does that work?
He states the condition for innocence first. If you haven't slept with another man, if you haven't gone astray while married, then this bitter water won't harm you. You'll be cleared.
Okay, that's the if innocent part.
But, he continues, if you have gone astray and defiled yourself, then comes the curse invoked by the oath she takes.
And the curse is described physically.
Very vividly. May the Lord cause your people to curse and denounce you when he causes your thigh to waste away and your abdomen to swell.
Wow. Thigh wasting away and abdomen swelling. That's incredibly specific.
It is. And the priest links it directly to the water. May this water that brings a curse enter your body so that your abdomen swells and your thigh wastes away.
The text doesn't really explain how this would happen physically, just that it's the divinely imposed consequence if she's guilty and takes the oath falsely.
Correct. It's presented as a direct result of the ordeal. And the woman has to respond to all this.
What should she say?
She must say, "Amen, so be it." Essentially, agreeing to the terms of the oath and its potential consequences. Assenting to the process.
Okay, she agrees. Then what happens with the water?
The ritual continues.
Yeah.
The priest writes down these curses, the words of the oath she just heard, onto a scroll.
He writes them down.
And then, in a really striking image, he washes the ink, the writing, off the scroll into the bitter water.
So the words of the curse are literally dissolved into the water she's about to drink.
That seems to be the powerful symbolism, yes. The potential judgment becomes part of the substance she ingests.
Okay. And the grain offering she was holding.
Right, before she drinks. The priest takes the barley offering from her hands, waves it before the Lord, a presentation gesture, brings it to the altar, and burns a handful of it, a memorial portion.
So the offering is made first.
The text says, after the memorial portion is burned on the altar, then the priest has her drink the water.
Okay, the moment of truth, so to speak. Yeah. And the outcomes are laid out clearly.
Yes, very clearly, serving as the result of this divine test.
If she was unfaithful.
Then, the text says, the water enters her, causes bitter suffering, her abdomen swells, her thigh wastes away, and she becomes an object of cursing among her people. The curse takes effect.
And if she was innocent?
If she hasn't defiled herself, she's cleared of guilt. The water has no ill effect. And the text adds something interesting. She will be able to have children.
So not only is she unharmed, but her standing and future fruitfulness are affirmed. Almost like a blessing counteracting the suspicion.
It does seem that way. Her innocence is confirmed, and her place in the community, including her reproductive capacity, is validated.
So the chapter wraps this section up by just stating this is the law of jealousy.
Yes, it reiterates this is the law for when a wife goes astray, or when a husband feels jealous and suspects her, even without proof. The priest has to follow this whole procedure.
And it concludes by assigning responsibility, or rather, clearing the husband.
Right. It says the husband who brought the suspicion is considered innocent of any wrongdoing, just for suspecting and initiating the process, while the woman bears the consequence of her sin if she is guilty. If innocent, she's cleared by the ordeal. It's a system designed to handle hidden sin or unfounded suspicion via ritual.
It's quite something. Looking back at the whole chapter then, it's striking how much ground it covers in just these verses.
Absolutely. You go from, community-wide purity rules related to disease and death tied directly to God's presence.
To very specific legal procedures for making restitution when someone's been wronged financially or materially, linking that to faithfulness to God.
And then culminating in this incredibly detailed, almost supernatural ritual ordeal to resolve suspicions of hidden marital infidelity where no human evidence exists.
It really makes you think about how this ancient society, as described here, tried to create mechanisms for dealing with such different kinds of problems: public health, civil justice, and deeply private, hidden potential sins.
All within this framework where the divine is seen as directly involved in maintaining order and revealing truth.
Thinking specifically about that lot of jealousy, the bitter water ordeal, it's presented as the way to find truth when all else fails, when there's only suspicion.
Which leaves us with something to mull over, perhaps. Consider this. In a time before DNA tests, before modern forensics, what was the function of a ritual like this ordeal of the bitter water? What kinds of social or psychological problems might it have aimed to resolve, even beyond determining guilt? And what does its inclusion in a sacred text like this? Numbers suggest about how they understood justice, evidence, and maybe divine intervention.